Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You're back once again with the Economancer. Today we're not going to be doing philosophy, so I know some of you are happy and some of you are sad, but it's okay. We're going to be talking about some of the great work done in the Economicon, and this is going to be mildly political, because it's also a political page, because my background is mostly in special interest groups and corruption, and I've done a lot of general overview of corruption, but I haven't really done a whole lot of general overview associated with special interest groups. In fact, most of the stuff that I've done with special interest groups have kind of been tangential to the work that I've done in corruption, or going over like Gary Becker's model of special interest groups. And unless you have background knowledge in that, then you're probably not going to care about what's going on in it anyway. But today I figured I would go into some general basic understandings of special interest groups, kind of give a 1,000-foot view of it, and then look into what are some of the good and the bad things, or positive arguments and negative arguments associated with special interest groups. So let's get in it. All right, so special interest groups in America, also known as lobbies, are organizations that seek to influence government policy by advocating for certain causes or industries. These groups can range from corporations to small nonprofit organizations, and they use a variety of methods to influence policy that include lobbying, campaign contributions, grassroots mobilization, etc. So, kind of lay down some general ideas here. Political voice, which is something you'll hear often, refers to any actions or efforts undertaken by individuals or organizations with the goal of influencing government policy or decision making. This can involve directly affecting the development or implementation of public policy, or indirectly influencing the selection of people who make public policy decisions. Political voice can take many forms, such as lobbying, campaigning, protesting, or voting. It is an important aspect of democratic societies, as it allows individuals or groups to have a say in the decisions that affect their lives and communities. Next, we're going to talk about Nicholas Luhmann, obviously. So he stated that communication between organizations is a unique and distinct form of communication that is different from communications between individuals. He argued that organizations are complex systems that communicate with each other through a variety of channels, such as legal documents, contracts, official statements, and that these forms of communications are necessary for the functioning of society. So this theory is based on the idea that organizations are complex systems with specific structures, functions, and communication channels that are unique to them. And that's why he said only organizations can communicate with other organizations, because the codification of the language or the processes, the media, the medium of exchange are all associated strictly with those organizational structures internally. Now, it's important to understand that special interest groups can influence legislation through more than just elected representatives. So you have congressional staffers. They play the central role in the legislative process, often register positions of outside interest groups and evaluate policy options for legislators. So an additional consideration about this from those representatives, if you take the representatives from the interest groups, they may directly participate in the legislative process by assisting staff in drafting legislation and providing talking points for legislators to use in public. They also help legislators write letters to each other, and open letters designed to put pressure on other branches, most notably the executive branch, but there are some cases of them trying to pressure the judicial branch. So one argument in favor of special interest groups is that they provide a way for citizens and organizations to have a voice in the political process. So by organizing and pooling resources, these groups can make their voices heard in ways that would be difficult for individuals to achieve on their own, not just the notice that they can't discuss anything because it's only organizations that can discuss things, or organizations can only communicate with organizations. But there's also the problem of resources. So special interest groups also provide a way for underrepresented groups such as minorities and small businesses to have a say in policy decisions that affect them, though a lot of the literature would say that that's not true. So another argument in favor of special interest groups is that they can serve as a check on government power. By advocating for certain policies or opposing others, special interest groups can ensure that government officials are accountable to the public and that policy decisions are made in the public interest, even though we don't know what the public interest is, because it's only special interest groups who are there making policy. And in a special interest group is obviously some special individual associated with what they want and not the public in general. So, and we'll get into that. So on the other hand, special interest groups, oh wow, that probably is loud. Special interest groups can also lead to unequal outcomes in the political process. One criticism is that they can have disproportionate influence over government policy, particularly if they have a lot of money to spend on lobbying and campaign contributions. Wealthy special interest groups can use their resources to shape policy in ways that benefit them at the expense of the general public. And I think everybody's heard that argument till they're blue in the face. That is like the ultimate argument from both the right and the left on this problem associated with special interest groups. Now, libertarian-minded people are typically in favor of special interest groups as a way to get their voice out, and they don't tend to agree with the statement that it will overpower the other voices in the system, but it's something to think about. So another criticism is that special interest groups can lead to a gridlock and dysfunction in the government. When too many groups are fighting for their own interests, it can be difficult for policymakers to make decisions that are in the best interest of the country as a whole. And this is something we talked about with Gary Becker's model, where we're looking at it and we see that there's some type of equilibrium status where we have the subsidizer and then we have the tax population, the subsidized population, and then the tax population, and it's somehow equaling zero because they're pouring equal amount of resources into each other. And then you're only relying on a government official's ideology and a few other distinct attributes. So in conclusion, special interest groups play a significant role in American political process. They can serve as a way for citizens and organizations to have a voice in the government and as a check on the government's power. However, we also have to understand that the influence of special interest groups can also lead to unequal outcomes in the political process, particularly if they have a disproportionate amount of resources to influence that policy. It's important for the government to have regulations ensure fair representation for all groups and to prevent the influence of money in politics. And you best believe the next video that we're probably going to be doing is going to be on: should we regulate special interest groups? Can you regulate special interest groups? What does it mean to regulate a special interest group? Would that not mean that the government gets to tell who has a voice? Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of the special interest group? You'll have to watch the next episode and find out.